Hey everyone, this is S.M. Pratt, and it's time for the 2019 June Patreon exclusive video. It's tornado season right now, and the tornadoes hit Pokemon. There were some massive positives and some hugely destructive tornado negatives. This month is basically the month of the collector Charizard. You will get a full comprehensive breakdown on this card. I don't think there's a single person right now who can give you all the information you're about to hear. I was on the phone for over 10 hours this week with Charlie. I know every single person and have done business with every single person that is part of the problem, that is trying to make this a negative thing. But there's timestamps below. I'll talk about the collector Charizard in between modern and vintage. I'm going to get the modern stuff going first. Then we'll talk about collector Charizard because it's not going to be positive. I don't want this to start out just right down, straight nosedive in negativity. So you can click the timestamp below if you want to go directly to it. But we're going to start with modern. Starting with actually, let me start general. Modern, talk about the tornado thing. There's a lot of activity right now, which is good. My May month was, I think, the most active so far. These past 2 months have been very active for sales, and just activity overall has been, a lot for this year, the most for this year. So that's a good general starting point. The Remix Bout set that's coming out in July that I mentioned earlier with Charizard, Venusaur, Blastoise, that one I touched on before, it's called Remix Bout. There's like one little blurb on Bulbapedia, no detailed information yet, but it has, the starters on the pack. That's all we know. I went big on it. I said, I'm going to buy a ton of this because when you have Charizard on the front of a pack, it might do well. So we don't really know anything, but I'm assuming it's going to be one of the end of the era type releases, like a CP4 type deal, a boxy type release, where it's the end of the Sun and Moon cycle. So they're probably just doing like that, last hurrah, and we've seen it before. Again, it has Blastoise, Venusaur, Charizard, so I'm just buying it. Who knows what else is involved, but it's called Remix Bout. It's coming out in July. I'll keep you posted when I get more information on the contents. Next up, English Shiny GX. Still nothing. There's your TLDR. Still nothing. Nothing definitive. We have nothing definitive on English Shiny GX. What we do have is that we have the cards that are going to be in this new mysterious mini set, and let's start with that. I don't know how you can take literally the largest set in Pokemon and turn it into a mini set. Those two don't go together at all. So Shiny GX is 250 cards. This new set is not 250 cards. It's a mini set. Also, the artwork that has been released is from the family gift set from the Pokemon Center in Japan. That was a little release they had in the Japanese Pokemon Center. So this looks more like some type of combo release with that, and maybe bundling some other or peppering some other stuff in there, because you have Mew on the Mew is one of the Pokemon in the information, and Mew's not in Shiny GX. Basically, we're at a point where there's no indicator whatsoever. Even if they said, oh, we have a couple shining cards from Shiny GX, okay, there's an indication. But there just is nothing to show a strong trend or correlation between the two yet. The second I see that, I'll let you know. But even if it comes out that Shiny GX ends up coming out in English, it's probably going to be like Boxy. A 250 card set, that's going to have to be its own release. I wonder if this is why it's taken so long, because normally it takes 3 months, 6 months at the latest to come out in English, if it's ever going to be released in English, is because of this massive size. So if it does come out, it's probably going to be like Boxy. If you look at Boxy, Best of X and Y, the Japanese boxes are really concise. They look great. It's a nice set. In English, it's like Premium Trainer, Super Awesome, Best of XY, Charizard ? It's like this brutal title that I couldn't even tell you the name of it because it's so terrible no one cares about it. So the Japanese side of Boxy, even though it had an English release, the boxes are still more valuable than they were during release. They look nice, better identity. I mean, another one, Pokekanyun. A guy actually boxed sitting right here. Pokekanyun's another one. They did this with Generations. It was like parceled out into Generations. This is much better. Nice little box. Don't even care that it's pink. Don't care that it's hearts all over it. Nice identity. Valentine's Day. Brought some of the girls into the hobby. Successful release. Generations, it was just like, okay. So that's another example. The Pokemon box, you can't get it like under $150 now. Generations, still the same value. No movement at all. So there you go. Another data point. Even if Shiny GX does go to English, I think that's what it's going to do. Ancient Mew reprint, that's another one people want me to talk about. HMU reprint's going to be interesting. I think it's fun. That's what I'd go for. Fun, kind of like Evolutions. Evolutions was a blast. You know, being around during the Evolutions release, Evolutions alone brought a lot of people back into the hobby. It was a fun time. I mean, it was just pure bliss. Seeing the scans of the cards as they come out in real time. You know, whenever Pokemon Center redesigned the site to make it look like 90s nostalgia, it was just home run across the board. However, when you're talking about reprints with Ancient Mew, what we know is it's going to be an identical reprint. The only difference is the copyright, but of course, identical in what way? Is it going to be like the English Hollow? Is it going to be the Ancient Mew 1 Hollow, the Ancient Mew 2 Hollow? You know, I'm sure it's going to be something different in that regard, but at the end of the day, my opinion on reprints in general, they're like clones. They have a half-life. I've yet to see a reprint that does better than the original. I mean, look at first edition Charizard, Shadowless Charizard, Unlimited Charizard, CP6 Charizard, and so on. The only time when, you know, maybe one goes above the other is if there's a difficulty there. Like, let's say Evolution's Charizard is difficult to grade, which is true. Actually, this is a good example. It might move above, like, let's say, an Unlimited at some point because that element of difficulty to grade is so strong that it's like, okay, there's only like a handful of these. That can escalate it. However, in general, 1-to-1, when you're looking at the art, if all other variables are the same, people could just go for the original. I mean, it's just basic logic. You know, if they're both the same value and you have a choice between the reprint or the original, you're going to go with the original. I mean, and that's usually why the value organically is higher. So, with the Ancient Mew reprint, I think it's going to follow suit of that general trend. It's Ancient Mew. It's not going to be anything crazy. It's just fun. That's why I started with the word fun, and I'm going to close with the word fun because that's what it's going to be. I think it'll just get people interested. Again, it's Pokemon doing wonders. Right now, Pokemon's in the zone with marketing, throwing out all this stuff, getting organic traffic. They're doing their job. You know, this is another little branch, another little leaf. It's doing well. It's just going to be another little thing that I think people are going to be like, oh my god, I remember that card. And then they get on Google, maybe they start watching this in prep videos, who knows. But it's just going to have that same organic advertising effect. So it's a good release. I'm excited. But again, it's going to be a cheap card. It's an Ancient Mew. A macro trend I want to talk about with you is the range of what people are buying now. So if we go back to, like, let's say 2009, the line in the sand used to be pre-2003. It was pre-2003 trophy cards or pre-2002, like basically new back versus old back, like the end of the golden era. And now I think that's extended all the way to LP. I think people are consistently collecting everything from WotC to LP. I would say Diamond and Pearl is a little murky still. It's not as fleshed out. But I see people messing with everything all the way to LP. Even Heart Gold, Soul Silver. I see people buying the whole block, you know, until 2010. And I think that's because with time, you have so many different age groups. The market is so diverse now. Even in that one, what was supposed to be a lighthearted thread on E4, where I said, hey, you know, what age range do you fit in? I was surprised actually by the 40 plus. I didn't realize how many 40 plus year olds there were out there. And, you know, speaking to that, if we go back 5 years, there weren't many guys with kids or thinking about having kids. And now you regularly see people who are like, oh yeah, my son or my 2 kids or whatever. That's much more commonplace now. So with time, you start to have these new arenas blossom, you know, these new interests grow. And with the timeline, I think the line in the sand now is with the LP promos. And, you know, I mentioned last time with Overrated, those LP promos that have the reprinted artwork that's in English for like $1. Yeah, I think those specifically are overrated when you're paying $1,000 in that context. But there is a lot of nice stuff in the LP. Like, for example, Master Scroll. I know it's very rare. Unique art, very unique art actually, with that strong hollow design, very unique. So it's a hate or love it for some people, but at the end of the day, it's very rare, unique, and that card has done nothing but grow. If anything, hold value at the worst. Master's Key, I know, is ridiculous. It's way up there at the top of the mountain, but that's another one. Even the 2010 illustration contest cards, I'll talk about that later on sales. Those have increased as well. These are all that, you know, that nucleus of LP. I think it's just something that is straddling that fence of, yeah, it's still new, but it's aged enough now that its identity, you know, is stronger. Because when it was just, oh, okay, just black and white, it's like, oh yeah, that was just the last generation. Now you got black and white, then you got X and Y, and then you got X and Y break, and now you got Sun and Moon. I mean, so I've said this before, as long as the timeline increases, you'll see that aggregate move forward. You'll see people start to adjust and understand the hobby differently. And even for me, my perception of like, I remember when I thought Gold Stars were still new. I don't think Gold Stars are new anymore because of that extended timeline. So I see people collecting now everything from WotC to LP. One other thing to give you on that topic is that because people are collecting this and because people collect everything there, doesn't mean all this stuff is going to have movement and activity. You know, not every card is the same. Every investment isn't the same. Every collectible isn't the same. Like a Jump Pluff and Neo is probably going to be the same price 3 years from now. So that's what you got to remember. Just because some of the stuff's moving, that's why I said overrated. I think that those in particular are really high right now. But just throwing that in there to emphasize that not everything is going to act identically, even though the range has extended. Okay, now it's time to do the Collector Charizard. It's time for the Storm. I'm just going to give you a warning. I'm going to go into this 100% candid and be 100% transparent with you. This is all my opinion and experience. We're talking like the person who is connected to everybody in this hobby does this and goes harder than I think most people do, not only in Pokemon, but in a lot of things. And this is ultimately my opinion, okay? I'm just going to start there, and whatever I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to be candid, and you're going to get the whole comprehensive breakdown. So the TLDR with Collector Charizard, it's not fan-made. Charlie didn't make this card. That's not possible. So the Collector Charizard was actually not even strictly Charlie's idea. And people need to understand all this stuff developed from a 2-year process of Charlie trying to get a collector convention sanctioned by Pokemon. Why? Because Pokemon doesn't acknowledge collectors. And Charlie or anybody, how dare they want to have a convention for collectors? And he flew all over the country, met with multiple people in Pokemon, tournament organizers, I don't know, all these different people he had to cross the T's and dot the I's with to get to the point where they greenlit this convention. And then in that process, I was in the room when this happened at Worlds, when he got the call. The cards were suggested, hey man, would you want to do a card at the tournament? He was going to do some type of, give you a gift bag or whatever. And those cards, when they stamp these, it's not done by Pokemon. They send them out to another company. Most people don't know that. And let's just say the company's name, Stamps and More Emporium. It's not done in-house in Pokemon. And more specifically, I think a lot of people in Pokemon are blinded by ignorance. A lot of this is an argument from ignorance. A lot of people think Pokemon is just a bunch of really passionate collectors, just drawing these cards. This is product to Pokemon. That's what this is. They take these, they send them off to get stamped. There's probably a 30% fail rate when they do the stamps. They throw those away and dispose of them. They take the good ones and they give them out to tournaments. Yes, there's extras, like with Art Academy, is in every single card that's ever been printed in any hobby, not even just Pokemon, because that is what real life is. And within that context, people seriously need to understand that you cannot go home and just be like, let me just stamp that. Let me just stamp that card. This gold foil stamping is done in a factory, the same exact place. The cards were supplied to Charlie by these people that greenlit the whole process within Pokemon. And why you have such a shitstorm now is because after this release, a butthurt tournament organizer from another regionals was like, whoa, that regionals guy got this convention with that card and I didn't. I'm going to tell. And ironically, the person moaning the most, the tournament organizer moaning the most, was in the room selling cards, extra copies. I was in the room with them, selling cards of extra copies to people, of cards that aren't even supposed to exist. If we're talking things like distributor promos, you can't get a single person from Pokemon to talk about it on record. Even voice, they won't talk about it on record. They won't put it in writing to the existence of distributor promos. The distributor promos that exist on the market all funneled through that person who's moaning. Every single copy you see on the market, I think with the exception of 1 or 2, that I did verify came elsewhere. So majority of the cards that are more than what was the suggested supply came through these 2 individuals. So at the end of the day, what you have is a massive F5 shitstorm. I mean, this is by far a shitstorm full of mile-wide tornadoes that I have never experienced in my, 15 years, whatever it is in Pokemon. I've never experienced something so petty. I mean, the petulance of these tournament organizers blows my mind. You would be dumbfounded how grown adults, we're talking 40, 50-year-old people, are just kids on a playground. I mean, that's what this is. So at the end of the day, The position it's in now is that I think because they complained to someone in Pokemon who was unaware of this process and they falsely believe it was given out at regionals when it wasn't. Regionals has strict rules on what they can do. So because of that, conditions were made top down for Pokemon. They need, like the statement you saw in E4, that was obviously some legal pressured situation top down for Pokemon. And of course you're going to comply because you don't want daddy Pokemon to spank your bottom. Because of this, the truth is ultimately lost, and the card's going to end up falling into this pre-release Raichu place. Now, I have a very nuanced opinion about the card itself, which we'll talk about later on in the video. But that's the ultimate breakdown of the Collector Charizard. I've been on the phone with Charlie for over 10 hours this past week. I've known Charlie for ages. I've known the people involved. I know every character involved. I've shook their hands, looked in the eye, done business with some of them. I know all of them. And it's the ultimate word at the end of the day is it's just disappointing. I think the whole thing with Collector Charizard to me is it's a litmus test for people's true colors. You really see the true colors of these individuals come out. You know, you see the people who are like, this is stupid, it's fan-made, it's dumb. And you see these truly insidious negative people. Some people we had to ban from the forum who come back on alt accounts and piss out their negativity. You know, people who were banned for shield bidding, regrading cards 5 times, just being heinous, unhappy people. You see it all with this card. It's a great litmus test on the true colors of Pokemon. But ultimately, it represents the fickleness of the hobby, which I think with time it'll phase out. We've already, in my opinion, we've already seen a growth and a cycle because the new people entering now have a higher consumer income, they're more mature, and they basically bottom out those other people because they just can't survive anymore, these like negative piss ants. So that's the unfortunate negative side of the Collector Charizard is it's just a new focal point because it is inherently ambiguous. You see so many people being edgy and attaching negativity to it that's unwarranted. It's unverified. And unfortunately, because there was a top-down pissing contest within the Pokemon TCG group or whatever you want to call it, it's always going to stay that way. But that's the rundown on it. Everything was greenlit. Everything was kosher. Why there's issue now is because some butthurt tournament organizer, and you'll understand in the adult world, there's a difference between what's right and going to court. These things are not, they're not always combined. There's not always an overlap with those. To finish on this point, there's a documentary called Tickled on HBO. Trust me, there's a point here that I'm building to. It starts out odd. It's like these guys, some homoerotic, like tickle each other, very freaking weird. And you find out this guy's paying all of them. He's like, I think he has like $6 million in some trust fund because he comes from a family of lawyers. And he just basically, these guys are like indentured servants to him. He says, okay, he just says, if you do this, I'm going to put this out there. He's just this heinous individual who will drag you through court because he can. And that's the situation you're in. So again, what's right and the fear of going to court are two different things here. So everything's going to happen. Everything's going to be taken from what's right just to extinguish this fire of going to court. That's why you have this tangled mess. I don't think it's ever going to change. But there you go. That's the breakdown of Collector Charizard again. It was all greenlit, but now it's tangled, and that's probably going to be the future of the card. But controversy sells. As we know, pre-release Raichu and all the other crap, it sells. Again, I'll talk about what my position is on the card later on in the video and how I feel about the specific card itself. So, done with Collector Charizard. Ending it right there, segueing into Vintage. The general trend I'm noticing for Vintage, everything's chilling. A lot of stuff's just chilling right now. We have some exceptions I'll talk about, but I wanted to throw an idea at you. A lot of people always ask me, Detective Pikachu, did it affect the market? What did Detective Pikachu do? I think the only thing I've noticed is that it brought in some people from back in the day who bought some of the, like, Shining Mews, the Naked Pikachus. I had an uptick on those sales, probably about 4 or 5 of those this month, which is higher than normal. And I think that might have something to do, of course, is my assumption, and might have some correlation to Detective Pikachu. I think that's what it's probably going to bring in. The migration it's going to bring in is that OG, that original generation. I think that's what it's going to do. And we see that already. How it worked with Pokemon Go is it took time. It wasn't like, oh, Pokemon Go came out, sales up. It was like Pokemon Go came out, and then like maybe 3 months later you started to see some action. 4 months later, 5 months later, you started to see a consistent growth. But it wasn't immediate. So I'll keep you posted on that concept. I think there's something to it. I think there's legs there with that, but I don't know how much it's going to affect the market. I think people are way too hopeful about how it's going to be like 2016 or 17. That's just not going to happen because the combination of variables aren't there anymore. There's people spending tons of money now that didn't exist before. So it definitely will increase certain items. I don't think it's going to be this big wave of like all vintage stuff increases. First edition WotC boxes are chilling mostly. Boxes that are going up, Aquapolis. While I say that, one of the bigger businesses, has a case of Aquapolis. Aquapolis, however you pronounce it. I mean, it's, you gotta understand, even the scarcest of scarce sets still has sealed product out there. Now, I will say E Series is definitely scarcer than like, the earlier WotC stuff, but at the end of the day, there's still supply out there. That stuff is still moving upwards, but I do see an unwillingness to go above 10K. That's one thing I want to give you, is that I see a breaking point at 10K. Definitely Skyridge flirts with that. Legendary Collection flirts with that. Ironically, both those are social media hype. But I think it starts to break. I think it's when the wave starts to break with vintage. More specifically, I wanted to also talk about, there's a lot of ideas for vintage rather than trends. One of the things I also want to give you is that boxes, I think, act differently because they have more diversity in the buyer pool. When I'm buying like this card right here, love this card, nice artwork, I think it's great, but it's more a collector or store that's just going to sell the card. Now with a box, it's like, well, if you buy the box, first of all, you have a range of buyers. You have collectors, you have investors, you have businesses, you have rafflers. As much as I don't like to acknowledge them, they are part of that equation. Rafflers aren't touching this really. Big businesses aren't buying heavy on this. But I think big businesses will be more bullish on boxes because it's something that they can break down. Maybe they'll open some of the packs, sell some of the packs, hold some of the packs, hold the box itself. There's a huge range. There's a lot of options, a lot of roads to go down. When you're talking individual card, just one card. So I think that's an idea to consider, when you're thinking, hey, should I pull the trigger on a box? I think why it has consistent upward mobility for the scarce stuff is because of that diversity. It could go on Instagram and some waffle, it could go to a business who's going to open some of the packs, hold some of the packs, grade some of the cards. Who knows? It's basically like the root for set cards at the end of the day. It literally is like the package for set cards. So I think that's something to consider with vintage. A lot of people are asking me, what do you think about boxes? Will they keep going up? I think that's why they have so much movement. But I do think there is this 10K fear. I think 10K is like that big boy number for a lot of individuals where it's like, I don't know if I want to spend $10,000 on something, which we'll get into how ridiculous it is in a bit. But that's, I think, the breaking point right now where the wave breaks. It's currently breaking at 10K. Maybe that'll change. Maybe a year from now when you're watching one of these videos, you'll be like, yeah, I think the new wave's like $25,000. So, for first edition base, obviously that's a different animal. Maybe Shadowless a little bit as well. But for the rest of them, I think that 10K average is like the ceiling right now. So, while talking about that 10K average, good segue into one other idea I wanted to talk to you about in vintage. Cost of business. I'm going to do a public video on this. I'm going to talk about it with you guys first. All the people who were like, should I open a store? Should I buy a case and hold it? Should I buy some product? I have $1,000 in the bank, $5,000, even $10,000 in the bank to spend. DA Cardwell just released in 2018 the total amount that they spent on collections. Total amount spent in 1 year on collections. Just pause the video, take a guess. $39 million. This is why I always say sperm of the sperm whale. Pokemon is so young, so fresh, so newborn. We had our umbilical cord cut with Pokemon Go. We are just learning our first words, first steps. We are very, very young. I watched this hour-long discussion about numismatics, about coin collecting, and we are absolutely naive to the cost of business. Absolutely naive. Most people in Pokemon have no idea. So like that 39 million, DA Cardboard's definitely one of the larger stores out there. That's why I would say these whales, when I talk about them, people are just so naive to how much these businesses are spending. So for someone like that who has that capital, who has a rolling capital of millions per month to buy on inventory, stuff like Pokemon is a breath mint, man. It's like this stuff is not even... It's barely digestible, It just goes right through you. It's like the corn in your stool. Like, it's like they don't even notice. Like, the body doesn't even recognize this. It's like, ain't nobody got time for this. Like, get out of here. It's like, it's so ridiculous how much these businesses are spending now. So going back to the idea of Detective Pikachu stimulating the market and all of that, and starting a business, it just is not going to be the same. Why it blew up with Pokemon Go is because you didn't have DA Carl World in the game. You didn't have graded power coming in and all these other people coming in with this high capital. You didn't have that yet. So now you do. So now you have people with like 5 copies, 10 copies of all these cards that had like one on the market. These positions that are naturally building because these stores are holding inventory, it just changes the landscape. So why I'm saying all this under the context of starting a business, this is who you're competing against. You're not just competing against people like me who are like these sniper, long-term, long vision people. You know, I'm a very rare thing. I'm like, I carved my own road. I'm not normal. These normal retail businesses that people want to start up themselves, those are the people you're going to be swinging against. And sure, come down the ladder. It's not all DA Card World. Not every business is DA Card World. But come down the ladder. Let's look at someone like Charizard Authority. Phenomenal guy. Couldn't be any more honest, hardworking. Ticks off everything on the box. He still couldn't hustle that physical store. Has 10 years of experience. He's got it all, man. I mean, he had the capital too. He was rolling that capital. So I'm just giving you the guys this fair warning because I'm going to talk about this publicly. I get people that still ask me, should I open a store? You got to see it as a hobby. You got to see it as it'll probably fail before it succeeds. You got to see it that way. This is not 2011. Even if you were first to market, it's a grind now for a lot of those people because, again, these big players are in the game now, and they change the tide. It's just physics. It's natural economics. Markets adapt. So, probably not the best time to open business is the thesis of all this. Just throwing you this like scatter plot of information because, again, it's useful, and I think it's a useful perspective for those individuals who ask me to Patreon, you know, should I open a store? Now, getting into sales, speaking of opening a store, sales were higher, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video. They were more frequent this month. I was pleasantly surprised. I actually had to spend more than this month than I planned because I want to keep my cost ratio at a certain balance. But yeah, there was a lot of activity. Not really anything huge individually, but a lot of activity from like, and again, my experience because what I sell, $20 to $100, $20 to $200, somewhere in there. A lot of activity in that range. And the funny thing, what you can take from that is, you know, that's disposable income that a lot of people have. You're hitting a wide range of spending there. Sold Sky Legend boxes. I think about 20 of those have made this video. 75, pushed the price up to $79.99 because I'm the only U.S. seller owner of that box right now. And even at that price, it's selling. I have, I think, maybe like 15 left, or I can't remember what it is left. And after that, it's over. That's all my supply. Ultra Shiny GX, still selling that at $99. I had a couple of these go in auction, and actually that was like some cross sales. Had some in auction that stimulated some buy it now sales. Of course, auction sales for boxes are always going to hit lower because when people buy boxes, it's usually they want the immediacy, they want the continuity. Auctions are usually better for individual cards. If that, auctions are always, there's more risk involved, less exposure, etc. But at the end of the day, buy it now price, I've sold none lower than 100 buy it now price. I know there's some out there, and I know some people are asking about that. Again, it goes back to that restock, not a reprint. Restock, two different things. Some people got more stock than I did. Some people, maybe their distributor has a better relationship with Pokemon. Maybe I don't know, they do something over there in Japan a little bit better. I don't know, did a longer tier ceremony with them. I don't know how it works, but at the end of the day, it was a restock. It wasn't a reprint. I have it in writing from distributors. I pushed them really hard about it, but that's why you see the lower price point. It's lower now than it ever has been. Now, Metal Wall is another one that I sold. I sold a couple Fairy Rise at 80, Metal Walls at 60. Someone bought 4 of those the other day. I had a small order. I had a couple individual orders as well, all at that same price point. Naked Misty, like I was saying earlier, 2 PSA 10s, $199 and $165, I think was the other one. PSA 9s, I sold a couple around 75 average. Shining Muse, I had, I think, 3 or 4 PSA 9s. Had it at $151. Had to do it. Had to do the Pokédex number, but that's about the going rate for it. I actually moved up. I have 1 copy left right now graded in inventory, so I moved up the price a little bit with an offer option. That's usually what I do when I'm down to my last one. But yeah, 3 or 4 of them I think sold $151, and I think that's about it for the stuff that I thought went in with Detective Pikachu. Also had some Versus cards, had some E-Series Japanese go from it depends on the grade. Some of them were 9, anywhere from $30 to like $75 for the 10s. Had Koro stuff go, Koro 9 sell around $50. Those depend on the species, because if you're talking like, let's say, a Koro Unknown, like I sold Unknown R, like something like that's like $45 or $50. But then if you have like a Nidoking, for example, that's going to be well over $100 because that thing's a pain to grade. Getting that thing in the 10 is like pretty much impossible. Or like a Jinx. A Jinx 10 Koro is crazy hard to find. So it depends on the species there, but I sold a lot in that like $50 average range, 50 to 75. Some of the newer stuff, Yokohama Pikachu, or the Yokohama Submarine, Swan, PSA 9s, I sold around $40 average, $80 for the 10s. Put some up in auction. Actually put up like 50 something auctions that'll end probably right when this video comes out or right after the video comes out. But anyway, those sold. I sold screen promos, a ton of screen promos, 5 of each basically. Mimikyu's the highest, around 300. I do think that these are probably gonna come down a bit more. I'm offering them at the lowest prices. I haven't checked in a few days, but I'm usually undercutting at the lowest rate, if not offering that when people make an offer. But yeah, it's still coming down because the supply is still hitting the market, so I'd expect that to settle a little bit more. But nonetheless, they've still been selling. It's so popular. Again, talking about that big buyer pool from the $20 to $200 range or whatever it is. You're hitting so many people with those cards. Victory medals, I sold the full set 2010 for, actually let me try to pull it out without messing up the microphone so I can show you. These right here, this is the second place one, just have a couple sitting on my desk. Random stuff just sitting on my desk. You might just see like an illustrator pop in the shot. But this is the second place one. You have the gold, silver, and bronze that go with these. Sold the full set PSA 10 in sequential serial number order. I don't know if that's what pushed over the hump. Usually I do about 300 average on those. Buy it now, make an offer. This one I think is one higher. I've sold $400 before. This one is higher than the average for sure, but wanted to give you that and just the full breakdown. Might have been because of the sequential serial numbers. Some people like that. I have some CD promos that you put up with sequential numbers, and that might be the little, the little cherry on the top that gives it a higher price. But there you go. Also sold some Shining Legends cards. Like Shining Legends Ho-Oh, I've sold like 5 of those this month. I don't know what's going on with that card. I don't know if the supplies changed or what, but I've sold a ton of those. I had like probably about 10 of those in 8, 9, 10, and I've sold all my 9s. I think I sold 2 10s, around $50. It's not like a crazy card. It comes in those Elite Trainer boxes, but I think it might be because the Elite Trainer box price moved up. During release, it was like 35, 40, somewhere in there, and I think it's gone higher. Maybe that's why. Also, of course, it's not all 10 guaranteed. But again, just throwing that data at you. Also sold like the Entei GX, the Raichu GX, Mewtwo Full Art from Shining Legends for $50, PSA 10. Mario Luigi Pikachu, PSA 10, $460 for the pair. That's pretty solid price. Honestly, you're going to laugh at this, talking about the mess on my desk. Found them. I forgot about the Adam. Found them. I was like, well, I should probably scan those and put them up on eBay. So I scanned them, put them up, and I think in 2 days they sold. And I think that's pretty much everything I have for sales. Oh, the one thing I want to close with, when I was talking about LP promos. 2010 Illustration Zoroark. Bought a couple of them with my eBay bucks. And graded them. Got a 10. Sold one for $700, sold the other for $800. And the one I actually sold for $700, so I sold the $800 one first. The one for $700 was auto accept, and I was like, crap, I should have put it higher. My fault. The auto accept saved the guy $100, so those are the 2 data points for that. That's a supply issue, because that was something where it's a rare set by release, but there was a guy in Japan who I think was connected, like the PK Onos or the Art Academies, who had extra copies. He was selling that set over and over and over again. He basically supplied 90% of what you see out there. So because that's gone, and because the availability has dissipated drastically, you have, I think, a higher premium for those cards. And I sold multiple now in the high hundreds. I wouldn't be surprised if they hit about 1,000 each. I was going to test the market soon and put them up, PSA 10 individually, to see how they do. But there you go. Those are probably the biggest individual sales that I had this month. Now, my purchases, because I had so many sales, I had to spend more. Luxury problem, first world problem. But I bought a University Magikarp. I might buy another one. I'm not sure. The problem is the guy is coming to me with other trophy stuff above, like, again, talking that 10K price point. He's getting into 5-figure territory, and when I provide that liquidity, I'm not going to pay top tier when I'm providing over $10,000 in liquid cash. That's just, you're getting to a different place with that. It's different when you're saying, oh, I have this Illustrator, or I have like a Pika trophy, or something that's like this monolith, but it's like with the prize cards, they're still floating around. You know, even the old stuff like Unicarp is there's only a couple Unicarps swimming upstream now. There's not as many as there were before, and they sure aren't mint anymore. But at the end of the day, you know, when you're talking that few $1,000 range, they're still in the process of availability. So therefore, I'm waiting on that one, but I did buy one. Not sure if I'm going to hold it long term, what I'm going to do, because I know I could easily make money on it in the short term. My natural state wants me to just hold it and forget about it. But anyway, bought a Unicarp. Bought some stamp cards, Worlds cards, stuff like this. Didn't buy any collector Charizards, which we'll get there, don't worry. Bought some actual Worlds, whatever you want to call it, like staff, all the way up to, what I do, semifinalist. Just whenever that stuff appears for a value that I think is undervalued, I just snatch it. So, stamp cards, last but not least, this guy right here, Alpha Time Walk. It's funny, I want to talk about this a little bit. Not really Pokemon related, but this is my favorite Magic card. I don't know why. The second I saw it, and of course it had to be one of the most expensive ones too. I had no idea about its value, and I look at it and it just reminds me of Tool, the band. Looks like the little skeletons with them with the clock on the face. I like Salvador Dali. I grew up with Salvador Dali. Been to the museum countless times. I don't know if there's something in there that's hitting like this 90s nostalgia, that surrealism. It's got the constellation of Orion in the background. Favorite constellation. Point being is, all this nostalgia aside, I remember watching this end on PWCC Alpha PSA 10, $6,000. I paid for a light played copy, maybe around there, excellent copy for the same price. You know, so why I wanted to show this to you is because everyone who's looking to get that deal, get the deal. That's everyone's talking about getting the deal. It's like if you're trying to get a deal still, you just don't understand the deal. And this is something I could have bought. PSA 10, PWCC, $6,000. Hell, if I even was the next bidder at $7,000. I mean, that card is worth way more today. Unbelievably more today. But why I want to reference that is because the fair market today for even a played copy, I think even a heavy played copy, I even think I did decently well on this at $6,000. Even a played copy is going to hit you at that price point because there's only 1,000 of them in total. It's one of the most iconic cards. I didn't know it was so playable. Then when I read the text, I was like, wait, you can take an entire extra turn? That might be good. I think that might be a good thing. So it's a Power 9 card. It's alpha as fuck. It's crazy. So just using that as a data point outside of Pokemon, more of an unbiased data point to say, here you go. Could have bought it for nothing back in the day. Chose not to. Bought it today at the new price point. Just showing you still doing that. Still, you know, people will hear about the record sales from me. Still doing record purchases as well. So there you go. Purchases. Now we're getting to the overrated, which is all about Collector Charizard. So if you wanted to hear my opinion on Collector Charizard, the card itself, and didn't want to hear all the other talk in between, hit that timestamp, and now you're here. I'm not going to own this card ever. I will never own this card. If someone wants to give me a card to do a review, I'll be like, here's the Collector Charizard, there's my review. It's something that I won't advertise at this point, especially because of the legalese and the legal pressure of Pokemon. I don't want to touch it publicly. More specifically, I don't get down with the ambiguous cards from English. I've always been hesitant. I've always been cautious, and that position has paid off for me in the long term. I was offered the pre-release Raichu in 2009. So here you go. You're getting your Patreon money to the max this month. 2009. Let me take a sip. I don't even know how long this video is. It's ridiculous right now. It's like Lord of the Rings. 2009. There was a guy named William who bought this card directly from WotC. And it's, thank God PokeGym decided to put it in writing because we can go back to it and say, there it is. It's documented. That is the only documented copy out there. And that will remain, no matter what anybody says. Even with my video where I talk about it's a dead collectible, doesn't matter. That card's a made man. It's documented. It's set in stone. Now, I was offered that directly from William. At the time, $10,500 was the going rate. For some reason, that was like the price. I don't know where the $500 came from, but it was $10,500 for the pre-release Raichu. I didn't want it. And that was around when I bought an Illustrator. A year or two later, I bought an Illustrator, and that's what I was saving for. You know, back then, those were close. They're even in value. Illustrator, I think, was always a step ahead. Now it's obviously way above. But the point is that I went with the Illustrator because, number one, unique artwork. Number 2, unique release. Number 3, a lot of unique stuff on the card that says illustrator, pen design, double star rarity, ridiculous artwork, huge lead nostalgic golden era, maxed out in every category. Oh yeah, and it's documented. That's the biggest part. Why that Raichu actually sold from that William guy was because he was frustrated that he couldn't get it graded by PSA. So he was like, I don't want it. And that's why he sold it to David Persin, who owns it now. But again, the card is a made man. That card is the only documented copy from WotC. That will never change, no matter what anybody says. You love it, you hate it, you can't figure it out. That truth will remain. It's the only documented copy. So, going from that, segueing into Collector Charizard, even though the genesis of this card was greenlit, went through all the proper channels, it's still going to fight that never-ending battle of fan-made, fake, whatever. And I think the only reason it's doing that is because of its high price, the cost to capital. If this were a $10 card, if it were Diglett, Weedle, Venonat, pick your obscure Pokemon, Rattata, whatever it is, it would not be this situation. Because it's Charizard and because the price is high, that is why you have all this chirping, all this noise. So because of that, I just don't want to touch it. I don't care if there's opportunity. It's too much of a headache for me. Also, I don't really care for it as a collector. That's something else I wanted to tell you when we're talking about just the card and overrated. It's not my cup of tea. Why I like stamp promos like this is because it's an added perk to something that's already unique. It's like, whoa, that's the champion, or that's the finalist of the World's card from whatever. This one's 2018 or 2017, whatever year it is. It's like, whoa, oh shit, that's the finalist, man, of the World Championship promo. It's like, when you tell me, oh, that's the Collector Charizard, it's just like, what is that? What impression is that giving you naturally? Put all the controversy aside. It's like, okay, there's a stamp on Charizard. And I think that's the thing for just the card itself, not talking about what it represents abstractly for the first collector convention, all that. Just the card itself, it doesn't do it for me. So I'm not a big ad stamp collector. I am with Worlds because it has unique art. It's a unique concentrate release for the freaking Pokemon World Championship. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills every time I talk about the cards. But that's why I see the difference in value. Even certain cards that are very niche, like there's a staff, or certain cards that were handed out only like at a regional thing in a certain country. I think even those have more of a uniqueness to them. It's like, oh, this is the regional variant for that place. Okay, that's kind of cool. I think the cost of capital, similar to Staff Charizard Team Up. That's a really good parallel that I just thought of. The Team Up Staff Charizard, I think, is grossly overrated because it's just a stamp on a card that exists elsewhere. Just like with the Collector's Art. It's a card you can get for under $1 all day. Same with the Team Up one. It's not an expensive Charizard card on its own. And just that stamp, it's like people just can't control themselves with Charizard because I think there's this linear mindset. I don't mess with that because I feel like hype just thrives in closed doors. I think hype thrives in echo chambers. That's where hype just loves to live because I don't think it can live in a self-regulating market. Hype is something that always gets extinguished by reality, rarity, documentation, availability, demand, popularity. All that stuff fights against hype. But when you're in this linear view of echo chamber, small Instagram chat, whatever it is, Facebook chat of toxic people, it's easy to hype it up, or do whatever it is. It's easier to create interest when people are so linearly focused with everything Charizard or everything, sets or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, again, I can't deny that these sales happen. So this is my take on it. Remember, every time I talk about overrated, it's my opinion. Of course, there's no top-down, truth from Arceus or Mew, and they can come down and just, bestow us with the god tier truth. But that's my take on it, is that it's not an exciting card for me. I own 0 of them. I won't own any of them. And you hit a point where there's better options at, it's almost at $1,000 now. Case in point. Let me just finish. Those videos going on forever. Case in point. Art Academy cards. It's hitting Art Academy prices. This Charizard card is 400 copies. Art Academy is 100 copies. Let's put an asterisk there, even for the extras. Still not 400, not even close. Unique artwork. Some of them even with Pikachu on them at the same price point. There you go. Case in point. There's just better options out there. I mean, when you get to $1,000, I think the cost of capital alone for me is just like, forget about it. I'm going to go with something safer. That's what I have for overrated. Again, I love all the people involved in that event. Charlie's a close friend. Talked to him for ages. I'm going to spend time with him at Worlds and everything. But the card itself, I think even he at this point is like, I wish the card didn't exist. But there you go. It's just, in my opinion, it's overrated because of what I said. Now, final underrated. We're almost pushing the hour here in this video. Final for underrated, the 1997 card ass set. I think I've mentioned this briefly before, but I didn't really dive deep into it. I just have these ones lying around. You got one right here. We got another one right here. We got another one off here. The magical desk just keeps producing. I have these just sitting around because I absolutely love this card. Absolutely love. I think I have one of them up. I have this guy up on eBay. This one, I don't think the value's there to even list it. It's just, you look at this card and it's like, it just hits you, man. It's like, you look at a mirror, it's like seeing yourself at like 10 years old again. It's just, this is what it's about. This is what collecting's all about. You know, for those OG guys, you know, the people who grew up, not during this era, but like during the WotC era, like opening up that Game Boy player's guide and this artwork staring right back at you. When Charmander had the little spike, everybody's watercolored, all Ken Sugimori. Literally every single card in the 1997 card ass set, original 151, all done by Sugimori. Not even just done by Sugimori. We're talking the original like concept design. And even with that, you have like Ditto like interacting with another Pokemon and another card art. You know, that was a huge deal back then to have like different Pokemon in the art. You have like, I think it's like golems exploding. You have like Mr. Mime, Invisible Wall. It's just, the artwork in there is just absolutely phenomenal. It's unreal. So, why put in underrated? Again, underrated doesn't mean make the most money, whatever. I think there is probably room for them to move. You know, I'm sure there's room for them to move, especially if, you know, a lot of this stuff, a lot of value is based, again, on that interest. You know, what are people looking at? What are people buying? So I'm sure if more people looked at card ass, yeah, I'm sure there'd be some market effect to it. But again, when I talk underrated, I'm talking about a value aspect. I think there's so much value in this set. Even like when I said earlier, naturally, that it's not worth listing this because this and a 7 to me, the value isn't represented in money. So I'm like, I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to sell it. So this set is just... Dude, it's so hard to talk about this set without being emotional. Like, honestly, if I talk about it too much, I'll just get goosebumps. Because it, like, hits all those little reasons why collectors are here. You know, what we grew up with. I think with Pokemon at the end of the day, I saw, like, a big, an actual YouTube channel, you know, one of these big channels where they edit videos, talk about, you know, this take on Pokemon and why it's lasted so long. And what he closed with was, I think what it does at the end of the day, what collecting does, for Magic, Pokemon, whatever it is, it takes you back to a time when you had no worry or no care in the world. And you can never go back to that. You know, you can. We're getting real philosophical here in the end. You can never go back to that. You know, you can never return home. That's a philosophical statement that's true. If I go back to the home I grew up in when I was a kid, it won't be the same thing. You know, the room will be bigger or be smaller because I'm bigger. So many things will be different. My perception will change. I'll be like, oh, I didn't notice that, like, paint chipping over there, whatever. You know, all these practical things now that you're inundated with as an adult. But yeah, this set, I think, just captures the essence of the hobby. I really do. I think it captures everything, that essence of Pokemon, what it's all about at the end of the day. If you want a set, I need to make a video on this set, which I will, and I'll echo some of these points being made here. It's just it, man. It captures everything, and I think it's underrated, and I can't say anything more positive about it. I don't see anything negative in this set. I guess the only thing you could say is it's not official TCG. But at the end of the day, that's why they had so much free license to do all Sugimori. It's literally all original, hand-drawn, watercolor, like, concept design Sugimori. It's just beautiful. So, there you go. That's what I have, guys, for June. We're going to get until July if I don't stop this video. So, we're going to get into the month itself. So, there you go. As always, guys, I appreciate the support. One thing I'll close with talk about Patreon. I had to adjust and get rid of the 30-minute conversation. I want to talk to you guys more, but I can't. I was naive to how much time I don't have. People even told me this. They said, hey, Scott, you need to limit your calls because you're going to start getting too many Patreon options, which is true. I've gotten too many of them and I can't fit into my schedule. So I only had the hour option left. Even that I might have to synthesize or like adjust to a 45-minute at some point. But now I change it to 10 for videos. A 10 and everything above gets the video. But the 30 option now is for messaging because, again, it's just a time issue. I have to do it because I don't have the time anymore. But it's a luxury problem to have because I'm getting more support. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I try to go harder on every video. Like I said, we're getting into 2020 now. I got to cut it. But there you go, guys. Really appreciate the support. I know this month was full of controversy, but it's still good. After all this, I think all this Collector Charizard stuff will phase out in a month. It's just a hot thing now. Something else will take its place. The market moves forward. Market adapts. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Let me know how you feel. Keep the comments coming. I do read them, and I take them into consideration for the next videos. And there it is, guys. There's June. Appreciate the support. Until next time.